welcome back. You know, in 7 of the last 8 presidential elections, the Republican candidate has lost the popular vote in America. And now Donald Trump has become the first president since Herbert Hoover to lose the White House, the House, and the Senate during his term in office. And after Wednesday, it's a fair question to wonder what is ahead for the grand old party. Let me note that we put out quite a few requests to Republicans to join us today, including Congressman Tim Walberg, Congresswoman Lisa McClain. They declined our invitation, as did Ron Weiser, the incoming head of the Republican Party in Michigan, with Laura Cox stepping down. But very happy to have 3 Republicans who have been frequent guests on our program back with us. The former mayor of Royal Oak, Dennis Cowan, is with us, as is Tori Sachs, the executive director of Michigan Rising Action, and outgoing Congressman Paul Mitchell, who decided 2 terms in Washington was enough and decided against running for re-election. Gang, thanks so much. Congressman Mitchell, let me start with you and your reflections about where the party goes from here. Is it fair to attach what happened on Wednesday to a Republican problem? Because we saw a new poll shows us that 18% of American Republicans support what the rioters did in charging the Capitol.
Well, 2 things. So let me make the point. I think that the mob was comprised heavily. There's intelligence information by white supremacists and neo-Nazi groups that are using the Trump rhetoric, the Trump supporters, as their excuse for anarchy, to be absolutely honest with you. And unfortunately, the conduct of the president and Rudy Giuliani and some of those folks simply encouraged them. In my opinion, I've stated before, they incited insurrection. They incited a riot. Where the party goes from here, I've said in multiple times, we need a serious reassessment of our leadership in the party. Our leaders, the leaders in D.C., failed to forcefully tell the president, you lost the election, it's over, we're done, and let's move on. And they should have stood up and done that. And many, to this moment in time, as you know, Devin, haven't done that. And I just don't understand that. You know, all the conspiracy theories now, they've all been debunked. The president lost. Our democracy depends on, I've said a number of times, politicians being willing to accept winning and losing with some level of grace and maturity, or we simply can't function as a democracy. And this is a perfect indication of that.
Let me let Tori weigh in, because, Tori, a lot of Republicans now want to take the remarks of what we just heard from someone like Paul Mitchell and sort of fold them into the, well, he's become a never-Trumper Republican, which is like a separate variety of Republican. What are your thoughts, Tori?
Look, Paul Mitchell has been around the Republican Party a lot longer than Donald Trump. I think that we can't be a party of one person. We have to be a party of ideas. And over the last 4 years, I think we've had some great ideas. We've had some great policy. Paul worked on them. Other Republicans in the House worked on them. But at the end of the day, what happened this week cannot happen again. And we have to be honest, and we have to be open about what happened, who started it, the rhetoric that incited people. And we have to make some tough decisions. People might not like, having to admit that they were wrong in supporting someone, but that's what we have to do right now. And we have to look to leaders like Peter Meijer. He's an incoming congressman from West Michigan, has a great op-ed in the Detroit News this morning. I really encourage everyone to read it because it's time to have some tough decisions and hold some people accountable.
In fact, Dennis, as I come to you, let me quote Peter Meijer. This is a brand new Republican congressman coming to Washington from Michigan, taking Justin Amash's seat. He's talking about the rioters here, Dennis, and he says they were being lied to. They were being misled. Some of my colleagues in Congress, they share responsibility for that. Many of them were fundraising off of this Stop the Steal grift. I don't understand how you can look in the mirror and go to sleep at night without that weighing on your conscience.
I agree with Congressman Myers. I read that this morning, and I was very heartened by his comments. I'm going to be very blunt about this. What the president said about Vice President Pence, senators and congressmen who have supported him over the last 4 years, threatened and demeaned them this week, was wrong. His comments at the rally and those of others were reckless, and they led to what could have been a catastrophic situation. But for those Capitol Police that were on duty and others, this could have turned into a significantly more tragedy than occurred. So what we need to do is, I believe, I'm calling for new leadership of our party. We need to look to individuals like Senator Tom Cotton, Nikki Haley, Senator Rubio, Senator Tim Scott, and others that need to step forward to lead this party through the next election cycle. You know, despite the loss of the presidency, we did very well in the House, gained seats.
Yeah.
I believe the Democrats will overreach in the next couple of years and will be in an excellent position.
Dennis, I think it's really important for me to, let me quickly point out that I'm going to assume that it took pains for you to arrive at that conclusion because you have been very supportive of Donald Trump for these 4 years.
It did, Devin, but I remain a Republican. I am going to work for the, support and preservation of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all Americans. I'm going to remain within the party. We're going to work hard. We're going to do the right thing. But I think has been pointed out by many, including Congressman Myers, this is a little bit of time for reflection, as it is after every loss in a presidential election.
Yeah.
But I think it's time for new leadership. I will continue to work with all like-minded Republicans, including those who support the president. But we need to move forward and move the party forward in a different direction.
Paul Mitchell.
Devin, let me quickly make a comment here that I stepped away from the Republican Party when I saw leadership after the election failing to address responsibly the outcome of the election. I believe this was on a path that was going to a bad place. And I put out a tweet at one point that said, hashtag stop the stupid. I won't get into the details, but I will share with you that I got a call from a senior person at the White House telling me they owed them better, that I didn't understand, and threatening me.
Threatening you in what way?
That they would have any and all information to blow me out of the water was a terminology. Now, I expressed to them, where I grew up as a kid, threatening me wasn't such a hot idea because okay, let's go. But that style of working with people is reflective of the mentality that the White House has evolved to, that if they don't get their way, they will threaten people. They will put them in one way or the other at some personal or political risk. I don't know. But the point was made, and I told them to go pound sand. But I'm putting that politely since your folks have to censor, but you get the idea.
Broadcast rules. Thank you for considering those. Yes.
FCC.
Tori, because this president then, I don't know what you want to call what will happen here as he moves into a kind of exile for a while, but President Trump remains, I think, very popular with many, many Republicans. We saw that also in polls even after what happened on Wednesday. How do you move or cede leadership from someone who I don't think has any intention of giving it up? Tori?
I think we have to have a serious conversation, and I think we need to have leaders who are willing to step up and tell people the truth. I think people have arrived at the conclusions that they've arrived at because they've been told over and over in certain echo chambers that the election was stolen, that the votes were rigged, that somehow Donald Trump was still going to be president of the United States even though he lost the election. Those things are just simply not true. And we need to have leaders who are willing to step up and say that. And we have to have people who are willing to follow the Constitution. I think what Mike Pence did was absolutely remarkable and great this week. A true public servant who's following the Constitution and upholding his constitutional duty. And for anyone to attack people who are following the Constitution, who are standing up for democracy, the American dream, those people are not what I view as a Republican Party. Those people are not Republicans. And so it's time for Republican leadership to step up and say that. And it's on all of us who go out there and talk about the Republican Party, who hold liberals and their policies accountable. And it's up to all of us to start saying that.
I got to get to a break, but that was really very reflective of all three of you. I'm grateful that you accepted the invitation to be here. Stay safe, and we'll talk to the three of you really soon. Thanks.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Happy New Year, friends. We'll take one more break and wrap things up right after this.